Good morning, friends. Hope all of you are fine, doing well, healthy, safe. So, today, last time we have discussed ectopic pregnancy, but now we'll shift to gynae oncology. Already, sir has covered CA ovary, CA vulva. So, today in this list, we are going to talk about carcinoma of endometrium. We have discussed regarding screening of cervical cancer. So sir is going to take the next lecture of carcinoma of cervix. The most important carcinoma, as already I told you when I was taking the screening of cervical cancers, this one is CA cervix. So as we all know, CA endometrium is not very common in our country. It is one of the commonest gynecological cancer, especially in the developed countries. It is around 50 to 75% cases has been reported from the developed countries. But in India, it is the third common cause. It lags behind of cervix and breast, now ovary. So it's not very common in India. So it is around, it occurs usually in the postmenopausal woman around up to 80%. So 70% cases will be in the postmenopausal age. And around perimenopausal age, it is around 20 to 25% cases. And it can happen, even though it is a cancer of old age, it can happen in less than 40 years of also. It is around 5% case. And the one thing is here that it is the cancer risk decreases after the age of 80 years. So why in the developed countries, it is the most common cancer. The first, this one, it is diagnosed early. Then, and there is a increased survival rate of the woman. And there are various modalities has been where we can diagnose this cancer as the earliest. So what is the typical, this one of the carcinoma of endometrium? It can be diagnosed early, mostly around 70%, 70 to 80% cases we can diagnose when they are in the very early stage. So the treatment is possible and cure is also possible. So 5-year survival rate at stage 1 is more than 90%. So it is not that much graded cancer as other people. And the most important, this one, it is a estrogen dependent. It is the injudicious use of estrogen, either endogenous, exogenous, whatever it is responsible for CA endometrium. So what are the risk factors for this? There is a old, this one they said that it is a old aunt. The family has a old aunt. This is the mnemonic for the risk factors which has been enumerated for CA endometrium. So the family history. Here either it can be the genetic, this one, or it can be because of the food which they are taking, more in animal fats, and this one. Genetic, already you know that is a Lynch syndrome, where it is a familial polyposis coli, CA on ovary, and then already risk of the first degree of family people. Then it is family has is hypertension. O is obesity. So in obese people, why it is? So there is a more of peripheral conversion of the androgen epiandrosterone into the estrogen, which is responsible for increase in incidence of this. So hypertension, obesity, and D is for diabetes. So this is called as a corpus cancer syndrome. Obesity, hypertension, and diabetes. So L is for, it is late menopause and early menarche. In late menopause, when the when the lady will have a early menarche and late menopause, that means the exposure of estrogen is more throughout this place. Then A is for atypical endometrial hyperplasia. What is that? We'll discuss later. U is unopposed estrogen in the body. So when either it is for the postmenopausal lady, when they are receiving HRT, where we have not added progesterone, only estrogen has been given. So unopposed estrogen in the body, or this can be any ovarian tumors. So hormone secreting ovarian tumors also can lead to this. Then N is nulliparity. Usually this here, C endometrium is mostly commonly seen in the person who have either nullipara or low parity. Um, then therapy. Therapy means the lady is receiving tamoxifen for CA endometrium or radiations, and the other one is infertility. Infertility also there is a hyperestrogenic conditions, and cases of polycystic ovarian disease where there is a estrogen excess is there, exposure to the estrogen is maximum. These are the people who are at risk for CA endometrium. So the actual cause for the cancer is unknown. It is a idiopathic. So early menarche less than 12 years, late menopause more than 52 years. Estrogen, mainly the problem is with estrogen. So if estrogen is given alone, as I already told you in a postmenopausal hormone replacement, estrogen secreting tumors of the ovary, so that will increase the incidence of that. In nulliparity and PCOS, it is mainly there is a progesterone synthesis defect, luteal phase defect, which is responsible for infertility. This one can increase the risk. I said corpus cancer syndrome, obesity, diabetes, hypertension in women is called as a corpus cancer syndrome. This is one of the question MCQ for you. Risk in women with breast cancer, ovarian cancer, which is endometrial type, colorectal cancer, and this is related to the family history. Previous pelvic irradiation therapy, family history of endometrial, sorry, endometrial cancer. 5% cases of Lynch or hereditary non-polyposis colorectal. Already we have discussed all these things. The endometrial hyperplasia, the lady who is on hormonal therapy like tamoxifen for treatment of breast cancer for a longer period of time, which causes tamoxifen can cause endometrial hyperplasia and produce the endometrial polyp. So there is a fourfold increase in risk of endometrial carcinoma. Actually, oral contraceptives, if they are protected, it will reduces the endometrial and ovarian carcinoma. This will reduce the risk by 40% even after the discontinuation of the therapy. That is the most important thing for OC pills. So OC pills are protective. Endometrial hyperplasia precedes endometrial carcinoma is usually in 25% cases. In all the cases, it's not that it is endometrial hyperplasia. So as the CA endometrium can happen in atrophic endometrium also. So what are the symptoms of CA endometrium? Usually the symptoms which appear very in late stages. Early stage is usually diagnosed when the patient has come to you with some other reason and you have done the ultrasonography and it is diagnosed on ultrasonography. But whatever it is, the usual symptoms presenting are postmenopausal bleeding, and this is the thing where the lady will compulsorily after the attending menopause, if they had little bit amount of also spotting or bleeding, definitely they will seek the advice. So which carries the postmenopausal bleeding, 10% risk of associated malignancies. And here the most important thing, the postmenopausal bleeding should be in the absence of hormone replacement therapy. Because sometimes the patient will, if they are not taking properly the HRT, there can be withdrawal bleeding, can happen. And here the compulsory the diagnosis we will see later, and sometimes the patient will not give you the history of postmenopausal bleeding, but they will come with some foul smelling discharge, some reddish color discharge, and this is usually because of the pyometra. The pyometra can be due to CA cervix, can be due to CA endometrium. And the pain, it is very vague pain, colicky pain because of the pyometra, or sometimes when there is a spread, distant spread is there, local spread is there of the malignancies. So this is regarding in the postmenopausal. So in the perimenopausal periods or in a early less than 40 years, they will sometimes they can have heavy periods, menorrhagia, they can have menometrorrhagia, irregular vaginal bleeding. If the cancer is spread and it is associated here, we'll have a pelvic lump or abdominal mass. Which cases it is there? When the CA endometrium is associated with fibroid. 3% cases of CA endometrium has been noted along with fibroids. So because as you all of you know, fibroid is one of the causes for fibroid is hyperestrogenic environment. So when it is CA endometrium is associated with fibroid, you can feel the pelvic mass or abdominal mass. Also in a late stages, when it is the myometrial invasion is there and the uterus has increased in size, you can have the mass. Then there is a changed bowel habits, sometimes constipation, sometimes there is a diarrhea. difficulty in micturition. This is all in the late stages. So when the lady will come to you for with these complaints, either a postmenopausal bleeding or menometrorrhagia, so on systemic examination as same, you have to see for when there is a pallor. In general examination, if there is a pallor, main important thing is note the blood pressure, because the endometrium is associated with hypertension. Then any lymphadenopathy, if it is palpable. Then in systemic examination, RA, CVS, lungs, you have to auscultate. It is a late cases, there can be some changes if there are metastasis into the lungs. For abdomen examination, you can feel a mass in the lower abdomen. Sometimes, if it is a, as already I told you, when there is a, it is associated with fibroid or pyometra, there is a vague pain or there is a dullness, pain over the on palpation. And so what are the signs when you do post-speculum examination? Sometimes you can see that there is some foul smelling discharge is coming, or some small amount of bleeding is coming. If it is a very late stage at the on the local examination, there can be some urethral a small mass can be seen at the suburethral level. If when there is a vaginal involvement and you can see a growth at the vaginal vault. On bimanual examination, you can usually the uterus is little bit of bulky. It is not corresponding to the age, because in a postmenopausal lady, the uterus should be how it should be. It should be hyperplastic or reduced in size. But here it is a normal size or more than normal size, bulky. In adnexal examination, if this is, there can be masses, and when we feel a mass in the adnexa, here we have to take into this one if there is any estrogen secreting tumors of the ovary are there. Then on colorectal examination, if there is a rectal mucosa involvement in there. So there are two varieties of C endometrium. Either it is a localized, here you can see here it is at the fundus level, that it is a localized one. And here you can see the myometrial invasion, it is a diffuse growth. So here I will tell you one, this one interesting. Yesterday I had one patient who, she was 62 years old lady. She didn't come, she came only for pain in abdomen. On ultrasonography, there was no this one, and she went to the surgeon. They advised ultrasonography, and ultrasonography, there was a cholelithiasis, and uterus was bulky. It is around 8 into 7 into 5.4 something. The endometrium, they mentioned it is 15 mm, and it is an irregular hyper and hypoic areas like that they have mentioned, and it was referred to me. So after examination on per speculum, cervix was healthy, there was no bleeding. On history, patient didn't have any, even though endometrium is 15 mm, the patient didn't had any complaints of postmenopausal bleeding. Never she had any spotting bleeding, but she gave the history of hematuria. So whether it is a hematuria or pervaginal bleeding, we can't see. But on clinical examination per speculum, the cervix was healthy. There was no bleeding. And on pervaginal examination, I told you the finding. Then after investigation, we put her for, what will be the investigation we'll do in a postmenopausal lady when she is having endometrial thickness of 15 mm, we'll go to the diagnosis and the investigation. So what are the, there are two types of endometrial carcinomas we have, which has been reported. They're type 1 and type 2. So some are estrogen dependent, some are not estrogen dependent. So the type 1 endometrial carcinoma is usually seen at the age of 50 to 60 years, and type 2, which is not estrogen dependent more, it is in the 70 years. So what are the risk factors for type 1? It is a chronic estrogen stimulation, obesity, anovulation, nulliparity, diabetes, and a familial history of non-polyposis colitis. Type 2 is usually seen, even though it is endometrium is atrophic, the type 2 endometrial carcinomas are seen in the atrophic endometrium also. So what are the precursor lesions for type 1? It is a atypical endometrial hyperplasia. And type 2, we don't know what is the exactly reason for this C endometrium in atrophic conditions. So usually the type 1, it is endometrioid. The commonest histological type is adenocarcinoma, which is well differentiated and good prognosis. So endometrioid adenocarcinomas and their variants are noted in type 1. And in type 2, it is usually the histological features of clear cell, papillary serous carcinomas, and these are usually with the very poor prognosis. So genetic mutations, PTN are seen, P3 mutations, the important one is P3, P53 mutations are seen in type 2. Metastasis here in type 1, it is usually the lymph node metastasis. Then through this we will see again how it spreads. And type 2, it is usually the peritoneal metastasis. It is, and the prognosis is good in type 1, and it is not so good. It is a poor prognosis in type 2. So what are the screening? How can we diagnose? You know what is screening? Screening means this where the one test is applicable to the large population to detect. It is only the screening. It is not the diagnosis. So to a test, that is a test which is taken where we can diagnose any carcinomas in their pre-invasive or preclinical stages. So, as for CA cervix, we have seen that the good screening program, pap smear, colposcopy, biopsies are there, but that not any good screening programs are there for C endometrium. Same with CA ovary, we don't have very good screening program, so they are not applicable to the huge population. We can't with. Occasionally, but when we do cervical smears, pap smears, there in 50% cases they can find out the endometrial cancer, but it is very rare. It's not true. Um, Endometrial, and this is one thing here when we do ultrasound for some other reason and we find there is an increase in endometrial thickness. So, and this is usually in a postmenopausal lady. In a postmenopausal lady, if the endometrium is more than 4 mm, always you have to be cautious and you have to screen that this one, and so go for the further investigations to rule out C endometrium. The lady who is having here, always one caution word is given when the lady receives tamoxifen for the treatment of CA endometrium, CA breast, where she has to go for every 6 months checkup with transvaginal ultrasound and measure the endometrial thickness. So these people need endometrial sampling when it is more than 4 mm. In a perimenopausal lady, in a premenopausal when it is at more than 10 mm and without any hormonal therapy, always you should go for the endometrial sampling. So how we will diagnose the case of endometrial carcinoma? The always clinical, a case of postmenopausal bleeding should be considered as a case of C endometrium unless ruled otherwise. So we have to rule out all the causes for postmenopausal bleeding. Already we have discussed this. And this lady always should be evaluated for C endometrium when any lady, postmenopausal lady, will come with history of postmenopausal bleeding. However small it is a spotting, it is a reddish visceral discharge, we have to rule out carcinomas in this. So by history, clinical examination already we have seen. Then tumor marker CA125, it is not very this one in cases of CA endometrium. But if it is more than 35, they said, in a very late stages, that can be. Pap smear, as I said, it is a not reliable method. One most important method is endometrial biopsy. So it can be either OPD procedure or it can be done in the OT setups. So OPD procedure where a small thin curettes like a Shaman soft curette or very PPL curettes which are used plastic soft cannulas, there we can just take a small without any cervical dilatation, without any standard sedation, we can take the endometrial strip and send it for histopathological examination. So this is OPD procedure, and but the most diagnostic definitive is histopathology. So these are the cannulas. This is a plastic long disposable cannulas, and which are used for in the OPDs. We have a small, very thin curette where it can just go and take one strip of the endometrium, which we do in a OPDs. But if we have to confirm here, there is a chance that because only we get a very small thin strip, there it is chances of missing of the CA are high, early stages. Okay. Then we'll go for what is the non-invasive technique first, ultrasonography, and nowadays it is a more of color Doppler. So the size of the uterus, the most important, how is the adenexa, any adenexal masses, then how is the endometrium. The transvaginal ultrasound is very much important rather than a transabdominal ultrasound. You have to just see the endometrial thickness, one thing. How is the endometrium? What is the appearance of the endometrium? It is a hyperechoic endometrium, hypoechoic endometrium, irregular thickening of the endometrium. When we apply the Doppler, there is an increased vascularity will be seen, and there is a decrease in the vascular resistance. The RI will be decreased, less than 0.3. If it is in a late stages, there can be formation of the, if when there is a formation of myometrial invasion is more, there you can see the intracavity fluid also will be seen. The nowadays more and more, and the 100%, we can say 100%, but not up to the 100%, but maximum we can diagnose is by hysteroscopy. So why it is advantage? What we do is hysteroscope, by through hysteroscope we can directly go inside and visualize whole of the endometrial cavity. So that is the advantage. In when we do DNC, it is a blind procedure. We will just go on curating the all the walls of the uterus, but where even it is a small, I already told you there are two types, when it is a localized one and it is a diffuse one. When it is a localized, very small area is there, and if we don't come into our curate, then we can miss the diagnosis. But with hysteroscopy we can go and visualize all the walls, entire area of the endometrial cavity, and when we find there is a suspicious area, when there are punctations are seen, there is a growth is seen, there's irregularity is seen, thickness is seen, from that area we can take the biopsy. So it is a under visual biopsy, so it is always more beneficial and definitive diagnosis. But the 100% is fractional curettage. So what is fractional curettage? So any postmenopausal lady, when come with history of, I was telling with one case. So yesterday we put her for fractional curettage because her endometrial thickness was 15 mm. So everything was done. I examined on pars speculum, cervix was healthy. There was no bleeding. But before that, when she didn't empty her bladder, for any procedure we have to first go and ask the go and empty the bladder before anesthesia. But it was a very little bit late for the anesthetist to come, so the bladder was full. So I put the metal catheter and drained the bladder. There was a reddish string which has come through the uh, into the urine. On speculum examination, cervix vagina healthy. There was nothing abnormal was seen. On vaginal examination, uterus was very much bulky and taken upwards. It was very high up uterus. And because she was very obese, I couldn't, even though under anesthesia, this one, I couldn't palpate much in the adenexa. But on ultrasound, there was no masses seen. Fractional curettage. So fractional curettage was always done under OT, under short general anesthesia. So first thing what we will do is we take a endocervical sample without doing cervical dilatation. What we'll do before for DNC, always we will dilate the cervix and then we'll do the curative. But in fractional curettage, we take, actually there are 4 samples to be taken ideally, but 2 samples are enough. So first sample is endocervical curettage before dilatation. 4 samples endocervical, then ischemic, and 2 from anterior posterior walls. Like that, 2 samples in from the endometrial cavity. But 2, so total 4 ideally, but 2 is also enough. So endocervical curettage was done. Then we pass a sound to measure the uterocervical length and how is the canal. Because when we are passing the curate, we should see how is the canal, anteverted, retroverted uterus. Then the cervix is dilated with Hegar's dilator. Up till now, this is okay. And then uterus, uterine curettage at the fundus and over lower. So I was going on curating a fundus, a lateral wall, right lateral wall, left lateral wall, anterior, posterior, but there was nothing coming. It was very not a single piece of endometrium also was coming. So I was very this one. I asked my anesthetist, please see the reports again if it is this one. She again opened the report and said, no, madam, it is 15 mm only, they have mentioned it. But then I said, if they have mentioned 15 mm and on the curating, I am not getting a single uh, small piece to send for histopathology, I was feeling, oh, I have the put a patient unnecessary for the anesthesia exposed, and it is why it is like that. Then when one was curating at one small end, when I was seeing thoroughly, there is a small piece, this much of weight, around 1 centimeter mass came from the other. So it is a localized one. So you should be patient when we are doing any surgery. So you should always correlate your clinical findings, then ultrasound findings with when you are doing any surgery. So all this should be correlated. If I would have left, there is nothing is coming, leave that. So I would have messed with this, and I would have missed the diagnosis for them. Then the small piece we have sent it for histopathology yesterday. So let us see what the report will come. Then polyp forceps we can remove if it is endometrial polyp, we can take the polyp out with polyp forceps, and we should send this specimens in separate containers after labeling endocervical curettage, endometrial curettage for histopathological examination in formalin. But if it is a pyometra, we should not do any curettage. Why? Because it is already very thinned out, and there is an infection is inside. It can get ruptured, and there can be spill, and there can be spill of film. So initially, the patient will be usually treated with antibiotics, and only we can just dilate and let that pyometra go on, and then after that 1 week we can do it. So fractional curettage is the diagnostic method. Other methods like X-ray chest usually for preoperative things, or when we suspect any metastasis, for lung metastasis. CT scan. The advantage is here we can 70 to 80% cases the lymph node involvement is seen on a CT scan, but the disadvantage is that we are exposing the patient, if it is a very much less than 40 years lady, to the um, radiological exposure will be there. MRI is more beneficial than CT for diagnosis of myometrial invasion. There is after the endometrial lining, in between the endometrium and myometrium, there is a small hypoechoic area is seen. It is seen on ultrasound as a black area. So from the endometrium is hyperechoic, then myometrium, it is a muscular thing. So there is a small hypoechoic area is seen, and when we can't see this endomyometrial junction is not very clearly designated on ultrasonography, and we do MRI, we can see the early invasion, myometrial invasion, very nicely on MRI, and endocervical spread, other spread. So MRI is more diagnostic than CT, but the disadvantage with MRI is it is more costly. Then positive PET scan, positron emission tomography, it is for to see any metastasis in other sites. So why hysteroscopy? I already told you. This is how we do DNC, or we take this one small endometrial curette sample, and this is the hysteroscopy. Why diagnostic? I already told you that we can very well visualize the entire endometrial cavity, and where is the suspicion, we can take the biopsy. So after we send the specimen for histopathological examination, so these are the reports which will come. Usually it is the adenocarcinoma is seen in 60 to 70 histopathological. Excuse me. So in 60 to 70% cases, it is the adenocarcinoma. It's a histological variety. 10 to 20% it is adenosquamous. 10% papillary. These are clear cell, mucinous, secretory, squamous cell carcinoma. Here, you know, CA cervix is commonest is carcinoma, squamous cell carcinoma, and in CA endometrium it is adenocarcinoma because more of the glands. So these are the histopathological types: endometrioid, low-grade endometrioid, high-grade, serous, clear cell. This is in the pathology already you have discussed. So these are PTAN expressions. These are all molecular genetics. So how we will grade the endometrial carcinomas? These are usually graded in G1, G2 and G3, and this is also used in staging where the treatment modality differs when there is a grades are different. So how we will grade endometrial carcinoma? So grade 1 is, it is like a normal looking endometrium. And we can see here is a normal looking endometrium where the glands are seen in a pattern. So stoma is normal. So it is a normal, this one, where there is a less than 5% of solid growth. It is already well differentiated things. The glandular pattern is maintained. Grade 2 is a moderately differentiated. Here, around 60 to 50%, there is a solid growth pattern is seen here. And in G3, it is a more than 50%. So entire thing, it is appear as a all the molecular changes of the carcinoma, atypia, everything solid like theme is in grade 3. So how it spreads? Usually in general, this cancer, what is the most, this one of this important feature of this carcinoma, it is already usually diagnosed in an early stage. So the survival rate is good. And the other one is, it is very slow to spread from the uterine cavity. Because, why? Because the main important modality of the spread is lymphatics. So as the endometrium doesn't have any lymphatics, right, it is very slow in spread. So unless it goes to myometrium and then serosa or down to the cervix, vagina, then there will be the spread. So you X-ray chest detects lung metastasis. Already I said MRI, ultrasound for myometrial invasion and pelvic spread. So this is after investigation also only we can find out if it has spread is there. So local spread, usually it is a very slow invasion to the myometrium, and this is the commonest one. So direct spread, it is a direct spread to the myometrium. Then it will go to the serosa. Down it will go to the cervix and then vagina. Then it can, so because of this myometrial invasion, there is a myometrial growth can be there. So it can, there is a uterine cavity can enlarge. Or it will, into 10 to 15% cases, it will, there is a vaginal growth is all noted, and the metastasis by direct spread to the vagina. Sometimes it will through the lymphatic also, but direct metastasis to the vaginal cuff is noted. Then hematogenous or venous spread. This path, it is less common, but usually when we see the low vaginal metastasis, it is due to the hematogenous spread. It's not a most important is lymphatic spread. So it is around 10 to 30% cases where through the lymphatics, the spread of C endometrium is there. So all pelvic nodes, including internal iliac, parametrial, through the tubes, ovaries. So whoever is draining the tubes, ovaries, round ligaments, broad ligaments, to all the things they can through, and cervix. So the lymphatics will, the spread will be there through that. And lymphatic spread is more likely when tumor is, I told you, it is anaplastic and the uterine wall is invaded. So after the myometrial invasion, serosal invasion, it will through the tubes, ovaries, if it is goes to through the ovaries, it will goes to paravotic lymph nodes. Down it will go to pelvic lymph nodes, internaliac lymph nodes, inguinal nodes, down. So most importantly, it is after invasion or to the direct spread only the lymphatics happens. So it can go to paravotic, it can go to pelvic lymph nodes, down nearby pelvic, up through the ovarian, this one, it will go to paravotic. Tubal spread by diaxial malignant cells can pass through the tubes in the same way, and there can be peritoneal spill during menstruation. And this is usually when it is less than 40 years of age, when they are menstruating directly through the tubes, it can go, like endometriosis. Already we have. So see, I forgot to mention endometriosis is also one of the cause, because it is a hyperestrogenic condition. In history, we have to take the, when there is a history of infertility, low parity, cases of endometriosis, because they also have a unopposed estrogen exposure. They are also risk for C endometrium. And isolated ovarian metastasis also will be there. So, what are the stages? How do you, if you go staging? The staging is usually with surgical staging, clinical. And before that, that is a endometrial hyperplasia. As already we have said, the endometrial hyperplasia is the, what we say as a pre-malignant condition, pre-invasive lesion. So previously we used to differentiate this into simple hyperplasia, complex hyperplasia, simple with atypia, without atypia, complex with atypia, or nowadays it is not like that. Either it is hyperplasia without atypia or atypical endometrial hyperplasia. And in atypical endometrial hyperplasia, in without atypia, it is around 5 to 10% there can be chances of going into C endo. But if it is with atypia, almost 70% cases will go to C endometrium. So when it is without atypia, at that moment, if the lady is young, she want to conserve her uterus, she want to continue for, she want to have a pregnancy, retain her uterus, there we can treat with high doses of progesterone. We can use medroxyprogesterone or norethistérone we can use for 3 to 6 months. And but the best thing is LNG IUCD, progesterone we can use. That is the best thing because there is a local supply of progesterone is there. So it is an endometrial hyperplasia. When it is not atypia is there, we can use this progesterone treatments. And if it is atypia, then definitely they should go for simple hysterectomy to avoid further things. Simple hysterectomy is enough in these cases. If she is young, again she want to conserve to get the this one with the due risk explained, we can go for high doses of progesterone. So medroxyprogesterone acetate 1 gram weekly, like that for 6 months. But every 6 months they have to go for endometrial sampling. So this is the FIGO staging. As I said, it is a surgical staging. So after the surgical staging, after we do the operative, then only we can stage the disease. So surgical plus clinical, histological. So all this mix, it is the staging of the C endometrium. So what is stage 1? Stage 1 is tumor is always here. So in stage 1, the tumor is always confined to the body of the uterus. So it is in the endometrium. In stage 1A, 1A and 1B. Previously 1A, B, C we used to do. But now it is only 1A and 1B is there. So less than 50% myometrial involvement, more than 50% of myometrial involvement. Less and more. So it is a stage 1. So stage 1A is less than 50% invasion of the myometrium, and stage 1B is more than 50% of myometrial invasion is there. So it is only depending upon the myometrial invasion. So can you see here? This is stage 1A and 1B. So 1A, if biometrial invasion is more than 50%, 1B, it is less than 50%, 5 to 50%. Whatever it is considered 1A1. So 1A1, A. So endometrium less than myometrial invasion is less here. Then again we are divided into G1, G2, G3 according to the histology, glandular involvement. Then stage 2. Stage 2, you see here it has come to the cervix. This is a cervix. So the growth has extended from the endometrium to the cervix. So this is stage 2. Here in stage 2, previously we used to say that it is only glandular involvement, then it is a serosal involvement, but now it is only 2. Tumor invades the cervical stroma, but it is limited to the uterus only. It doesn't go beyond the uterus. So it is only into the cervix. Then stage 3. Stage 3 is divided into 3A, 3B and 3C. In 3A, this has shifted from into the tubes and ovaries. So surrounding structure. It is growth from the endometrium to myometrium and to the serosa. Tubes, ovaries is 3A. 3B is it has come to the vagina. Upper vaginal wall involvement is there. And stage 3 is 3C is there is a lymph node involvement is there, and it is usually the pelvic lymph nodes which are involved. So that is stage 3. So local or regional spread of the tumor is stage 3. In stage 1, it is a serosal or adnexal invasion. 3B is vaginal or parametrial involvement, as I already told you, through serosal. Then stage 3C is metastasis to pelvic or paravortic lymph node. So lymph node involvement is 3C. In that they have said C1, C2 if it is only pelvic lymph nodes, and C2 is paravortic lymph nodes with or without pelvic lymph nodes involvement. Then stage 4 is distant metastasis. Again in that 4A, 4B. So 4A is extension to the pelvic wall. It has extended into the lateral pelvic wall, lower 1/3 of the vagina, or there are other changes surrounding kidney, bladder, everywhere, bowel. So 4A is invasion into the bladder, nearby structure, bladder and bowel. And 4B is distant metastasis, abdominal or other organs, lungs, brain, bone, like that. So here, stage 4A, it is a nearby organs, bladder, bowel. And stage 4B is a distant metastasis. It has gone to liver, brain, bones, anywhere. Or it is a lymph nodes above that, infantile lymph nodes. So these are the stages of surgical staging. It is a surgical staging of CA endometrium. Then so I have already told you the the high risk factors for C endometrium. So what are the protective factors? The most important things, because already we know obesity, diabetes, hypertension is corpus cancer syndrome, which is one of the risk factor for C endometrium. So weight reduction is always helpful as a protective factor. Exercise, because this will reduce the non-infectious disease like diabetes, hypertension. COCs, oral contraceptive pills, because of the effect of progesterones here and the nation. Use of progestins for any other thing, LNG, IUS, smoking is not the protect. This is wrong. Don't take it. Sorry. Treatment of carcinoma of endometrium. So how do we treat it? Already we have seen what are the stages. So the treatment modality, how do you treat it? The treatment is always a surgical one. So before directly treatment, that is research. So primary prevention, secondary prevention. So primary prevention, I already told you, strict weight control when we are giving HRT to the postmenopausal woman. So when we are giving HRT, we should always add progesterone in the last 10 days or at least 5 days. So 21 days you give estrogen, and last 10 days you add progesterone, or 5 days at least you add progesterone. So always when in a postmenopausal woman with intact uterus, progesterone should be supplemented for HRT. Then unnecessary, don't, for a minor this one, don't use tell the lady to go on using progesterone like that. Then always I said you add progesterones. Prophylactic surgeries, for this is regarding when it is a hereditary, when other things. So before that you should do prophylactic surgeries in this. Then secondary prevention is when the lady is a high risk woman. So screening of high risk woman in menopause, annual screening of high risk woman of less than more than 35 years is recommended, as like CS cervix. So here it is education regarding when the lady is with low parity or infertility, prolonged use of hormonal therapy. Here, when she is nearing to the perimenopause, we should educate regarding her irregular menstruation in pre-perimenopausal and postmenopausal bleeding. We should educate them, a woman, regarding these symptoms. And when they come for, here we have always mentioned that after 35 years of age, at least they should go for pap smear, as we say. Then they should visit the gynecologist at the perimenopausal stage, do get their internal checkup done, and if it is possible, ultrasound also. So here we can monitor the endometrial pattern, how it is. And if we find that there is any endometrial thickness is more than 10 mm in a perimenopausal test, there we should always do the endometrial sampling. So what is the curative treatment for C endometrium? There are various modalities, but the main modality is always and always surgery. So we can use surgery, radiotherapy, chemotherapy, and combined therapy. And this is regarding the stage of the disease. So preoperative evaluation is same for any all major surgeries. So blood examination, complete blood count, urine routine microscopy, sugars, because diabetes a very common risk factor associated. So fasting and postprandial levels, renal function test, liver function test. This is true when if it is a spread or metastasis. Thyroid levels, serum electrolytes, because these are postmenopausal old woman. Then I said urine routine microscopy, ECGs, X-rays, X-ray for anesthetic purpose of view, also to rule out metastasis. Then ultrasound, abdominal pelvic ultrasound for seeing how is the uterus, endometrium, adnexa, and any growths, ascites, lymph node involvement, MRI, CT, extrauterine spread, receptor status we usually don't do. So what is the prognosis of endometrial carcinoma? As I already said, because we diagnose it in early stage, stage 1, the prognosis is good. In early overall 5-year survival rate, if it is diagnosed early, is around 80 to 90%. After that, the grades are then B and C, and after grade 2, it is around 75-year survival rate is around 70%. So what are the prognostic factors for C endometrium? The most important thing is age and diagnosis. What stage it is diagnosed, that is also very important. What stage it is diagnosed, what is the histological type, either it is a endometrioid or papillary. So it is a well differentiated or it is a poorly differentiated. Histological grading, G1 or G2, G3. Grade 3, bad prognosis. When there is a myometrial invasion, lymph node metastasis, extension to the cervix or into the parametrium. So all the extension, anywhere extension that reduces its chances of survival. So how do you treat? So essentially it is a surgical treatment and followed by post-operative radiotherapy. So and the treatment will depend if on the surgery if we find any unfavorable prognostic factor, because during that our staging will differ. Progesterone therapies in the recurrent diseases we follow, mainly it is a surgery, and surgery is it is an extrafacial hysterectomy. So what we'll do, it will be total abdominal hysterectomy. It can be abdominal or it can be vaginal, it can be through laparoscopy. It depends upon how expert is the surgeon and what is the stage of the disease. So if with expertise you can go for laparoscopy also. So a hysterectomy with bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy with lymph node sampling, pelvic lymph node sampling, and in other case removal of in 1A. So how we do this will do. So surgery, either laparotomy, laparoscopy, robotic assisted. So surgical staging. So what is by through laparotomy? We take a vertical incision on the abdomen, we opened it. If there is any peritoneal fluid is there, we'll take it, send for cytology, then palpate very systematically through the abdomen to see for the liver palpation, liver if there is any masses, if there any growth is there, that has to be taken. So palpation, serial palpation should be done. Then we do a total abdominal hysterectomy, bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy through little vaginal margin, will take vaginal and ask the assistant to open it and see how much is myometrial is invaded. If frozen section is available, better to go for frozen section, then can go for lymph node sampling, pelvic and para-aortic. Omentectomy, or forgot omentectomy also should be done. So I already told you peritoneal washing, subdiaphragmatic, paracolic gutters, pelvis, open uterus, assess the tumor size, myometrial invasion, cervical extension, frozen section. So stage, they are mentioned stage based. So stage 1B, where there is a more than 50% of myometrial invasion is there, post-operative radiotherapies, and also stage 1A, but it is a G2 and G3. So glandular involvement is more, solid patterns are more, then it is always better to go for post-operative pelvic radiotherapy. So it is either localized therapy, or therapy can be in 4,000 to 5,000 centigrade or 5 to 6 weeks, and vaginal vault radiotherapy is given. So after 4 to 6 weeks of surgery, the radiotherapy is given. Stage 2, because it usually involves cervix but does not extend beyond here, give brachytherapy followed 1 to 6 hours later. Here it can be done two ways. Either you can go for radical hysterectomy like Vardheim's hysterectomy and radiotherapy, or initially give brachytherapy, then do surgery, and then again give external radiotherapy. Stage 3, it is a local regional spread is there. So stage 1, when there is only serosal involvement, adenexa and peritoneal. I already said vaginal. So here, stage 3 and stage 4 are with poor prognosis. So even we do surgery here, the main important is the, usually these are inoperable cases when there is a spread all over is there. So give radiation mainly, then adjuvant chemotherapy followed by pelvic radiation. So doxorubicin 60 milligram per square meter, cisplatin, paclitaxel, it is used. High doses of medroxyprogesterone acetate 1 gram weekly, or hydroxyprogesterone also caproate can be used in very high doses. It is given. This is all palliative treatment. They are not curative treatment. Whole abdomen irradiation with the shielding, pelvic lymph node irradiation sampling. Tumor stage 4 is already tumor has metastasis. Here it is a palliative radiotherapy, chemotherapy, progesterone. It's only to symptom relieving. I also said medroxyprogesterone weekly 1 gram or 200 milligram OD, and norethistron 1 gram weekly. This is given. Sometimes they said we can use tamoxifen also, because they block the estrogen receptors. It can also be used for the stage 4 cases, 20 to 40 milligram when there is a recurrent growth. So progesterone and tamoxifen usually in a recurrent growth is there at the vaginal wall or lateral pelvic wall lymph nodes, can use this. So 5-year survival rate in stage 1, it is, I said, it is more than 90%, 1A, and it is grade 1. So it is less solid. So more survival rate is more than 90%. Stage 2 around 65 to 80, stage 3 35 to 45, and stage 4 is very less, 5 to 20%. So here where before this one, women who are not fit for operation, who are fit for operation will go for surgery, but women who are not fit for surgery can go for radiotherapy. So KCM insertion radioactive therapy may be employed, but radiation alone is very less effective than combined surgery and radiotherapy. So comparison with CA cervix more of radiotherapy, but the survival rates are good for CA endometrium. So recurrence of C endometrium usually within 3 years of recurrence, and if it is a recurrence early recurred before 3 years, it is 30% cases will recur, and if it is an early recurrence, the prognosis is poor. So hormone therapy, progesterone, I already told you, tamoxifen can be used for recurrent. So how do you follow? That is very important because recurrence is common. So after initial therapy, every 3 to 4 months for 2 years, we have to follow the patient. Then after that, every 6 months, then next 3 years. Then every year. These are the ACOG guidelines are there to know the recurrence as early as possible. So what you will do when there is a bit follow-up, evaluate the symptoms, do the clinical examination, do sonography, X-ray chest. If in doubt, you can go for CT, MRI. And if it is a associated papillary serous endometrial carcinoma histopathology, CA125. So, thank you. Any doubts? I know it is a very exhaustive lecture. So carcinomas are like that only. Open chat. On 30th, we are going to your first internal examination. So, so whatever topics has been covered till now, we will have your exam, online exam. And already topics has been given for every lecture, I hope you always come prepared. Read the topic which from the textbook so that you can understand better. And after finishing the lecture also you read it. So you can be done with that. Okay. I think there are no doubts. So I'm very good in this one. Thank you.